Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Diane Burkhart. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Today is September 4th, 2024, and I'm so glad that you're joining us today. We have got such an incredible guest, and it is so funny. Whenever we got together to do this interview, we had no idea that we were actually in the same memoir writing critique group. Somehow we had always managed to not be in there in the same time, or if we had been in there at the same time, it didn't really register who the other person was until we did this interview. It was so much fun. And now, of course, we're talking all the time because we're in the same group, in the same WhatsApp group. And if you are a memoir author, you should really check out Memoir Mentors on Meetup because the people in there are absolutely fantastic. It's a wonderful group. They've been so beneficial. I know to me, and according to Jelaine, it's also been very beneficial to her. So if you need some help with what you're writing, this might be a group that you should look into. Now, let's not waste any more time and get right to today's fantastic interview. This is so unique. I do not know of anyone I have ever come across in my lifetime that has the experiences growing up that this woman did, and it's absolutely fascinating. So please welcome to Book Banter with Diane Burkhart, Jelaine Lombardi. The way that I always like to start these episodes is just to have our guest explain to our listeners who you are and what you do.
Hello there. Thank you, Diane, so much for having me on Book Banter. I really appreciate it. And what I'm here to talk about today is I'm an author of the book Running Around Naked. This is a memoir that has to do with growing up in a nudist park at a certain time in a certain place in the 1970s, South Florida. I don't speak for all nudists. And when I wrote my story, I didn't really want to either promote or deter anyone from being a nudist. I just wanted to tell my story growing up in my parent-owned park, and a highly promoted park it was, which I was a part of as a young child. And I just wanted to tell my story. I thought this is a different story, a different way of growing up. And I just wanted to put it out there and let the reader decide what they think about it, if it's pro or con.
I think that it is a very unique take on this time in American history because nudism was fairly common in like the late 60s and 70s. But it's very rare to actually find somebody who grew up in a nudist camp.
Yeah, I know. And it's funny that today, as accepting as people are of different sexual orientations, it still seems to be a thing. When I tell people I was raised in a nudist park, it's still like, giggle, really? What was that like? So, yeah, I wanted to tell what it's like. And it is more of an older group now in nudism. But I noticed just a couple weeks ago, they had, I think it was almost a worldwide nude biking event. So maybe they're trying to bring it back. I know in London they had it too. It was naked biking.
Well, do you think that it's more of a hang up in the United States than in other countries?
It might be. I know when I went to Spain, there was topless sunbathing. And it's that differentiation of sex and nudity, which has always been. And sometimes people can't get a grip on separating those two.
Well, and you come to some different foreign countries and you watch just the regular television during the afternoon and you will see nudity in the shows. It's not considered as taboo in some places. But in the United States, I kind of wonder if they're still dealing with the social, historical leftovers from the fact that the country was basically founded by Puritans. I kind of wonder if that still just sort of trickles down through the generations, that it still makes the idea of public nudity kind of a shameful thing.
Yeah. And I know even my husband had a hard time because he met me after my parents finally sold in the early 2000s. He met me afterwards and he still had a hard time saying, now, really, you were massaged as a child by a male masseuse, nude, there was nothing going on, nothing happened. And it was hard for me to explain until we actually did go to a nudist park not long ago, a few months ago, to do a book interview. Mm-hmm. So he did get to see what it was really like. And afterwards he was sort of like, yeah, it's really not a big deal. sometimes you have to experience it to get it.
Well, I know just personally, whenever I moved from Kansas to Denmark, the atmosphere around nudity was just so very different. I went in to have a bra fitting, like it was no big deal. And here in Germany, there have been different procedures with the doctor that it's no big deal. They don't even give you gowns to put on to go do
Right.
certain tests. You're just expected to walk without clothes over to do your test and back into the changing room.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even questioned. Nobody pays any attention.
Right. I know. And I became a lactation consultant. I worked in newborn intensive care for 32 years. And when I became a lactation consultant, I know I always had to make sure I said, is it okay if I touch your breast? I mean, actually, I am helping breastfeeding. So you would
Yeah.
think that would just be obvious. But in this day and age, I did have to say, is it okay if I touch your breast before? But I understand it a little bit because I've been on both sides of it. I became a nudist when I was 15 months old.
Mm-hmm.
So before my memory. And was a nudist throughout my childhood, adolescence, up into my early 20s. And so I've been on both sides. I've been on the inside, I've been on the outside, because I know it's a giveaway of my book to say this, but I did become an outsider. And I found myself becoming self-conscious of walking in front of an open window if I didn't have clothes on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I became very self-conscious. By leaving the camp, I became what I'd never been as a child and what I always promoted, why we wanted to be nudists, so we can be comfortable with our bodies and body
Mm-hmm.
acceptance. And I hate it. I must say this. I hate it when, and so many people will say to me, oh, there's some people that really shouldn't be nude, or there's some people that really shouldn't wear a bikini. And that's just the most awful thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it okay you don't have to have a perfect body? I mean, nobody has a perfect body. So why can't we just accept our bodies? And I think that's what nudism really is about, is the body acceptance.
At what point was it that you started to feel self-conscious? Because just the part of the book that I was reading before the interview, it seems like you were really enjoying just your life.
Oh, right. Childhood was wonderful. Childhood, I never gave it a second thought, But as I became a teenager and being influenced and being the butt of a joke, by going through my teen years and going to public school, the teasing and the expectations of what they thought nudism was like, boys who I dated during my high school years. And then even afterwards, even in my 20s, I moved to Georgia. I can't blame it on the boyfriend I was dating, but he did try to show me the errors of my ways. And I thought I was in love with him. And he did kind of steer me out of that. At the end of my book, I talk about that.
So what do you think is the best takeaway that you got from growing up the way that you did?
I would not change it. And I know my sister, my family, we all said that we would not change that time in our lives. It was such a free, and it was sort of a commune that we lived in. So we were like one big family. And I would say, give it a try. You ever have any inclination to do so, and see what you think. But for us, and even when I returned just a few months ago to the interview and my husband was with me, we did, disrobe. I said, I'm waiting to see what you do. Whatever you do, I'll do. And in the end, we did. And I remembered it brought it back to me, that feeling of freedom. You can't really explain it. You have to just try swimming. I guess if you skinny dipped, you might have experienced that.
Yeah.
But, as a child, you don't make your own decisions. Your parents make your decisions for you, whether it's to be very religious, very strict, very open, very liberal. And as you grow older, then you start making up your own mind. And that's kind of what this book is about, too. It's about finding your own way and finding out what is comfortable for you and maybe leaving your parents' beliefs.
So what was it that made you decide to write this memoir?
Well, I kept journals all through my teenage years. And I had always thought that, I loved to write. I wrote for the school paper, and I also wrote for the Hollywood Sun Tatler, the teen Tatler part of it, wrote stories about my high school. And so I always wanted to be a writer. And I ended up veering off into nursing and got busy in life with marriage and children and job and sort of put writing aside. And I retired in 2015. And I thought, I want to tell my story. I had thought about writing it in the early 90s, but I was, as I said, I was a new mom and everything. I really didn't have the time, but I had a title. That's all I had in the beginning was a title, and it was going to be called Growing Up Naked.
Mm-hmm.
But over the years, when I started writing, I decided to use Running Around Naked because there were already a few books out there called Growing Up Naked, which had nothing to do with nudism.
Oh, that's weird.
So, yeah, but they had to do with, children of war, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not to do with nudism. So in 2015, when I retired, I started journaling. And actually, my journaling was about something totally different. Retired from nursing after 32 years and joined my husband on a boat. And he was a boat captain, and we would take boats, run them up and down the coast. So I became his first mate. So that's a whole other story. But it got me back into writing because as we were doing this little adventures back and forth, delivering boats for his clients, and I was on the job learning for me, I started keeping notes for my own learning. And then before long, I started making those into stories and sending them. I had emails of all my friends and family, and every day I would send them what happened during that day. And something was always happening. So it was great. It got me back into writing.
That sounds amazing.
Right. So when we decided we semi-retired from that after a few years, and what an adventure those few years were, then I decided to start telling my story, my childhood story. It took me a year to write the rough draft and getting notes from my mother and my sister primarily and looking up history of that time and just validating my memories. And my mom and my sister, I'm very grateful for them for being open about their stories because not all of them were, nice stories.
Yeah.
As I say in my book, my sister was a wild one and she was older than me, 4.5 years older. So she did share her side of it. And I was sort of the, nerdy little sister. And as I was called at camp, goody two shoes. And so I had this conflict, and that's something else that goes on in my teenage years. I had this conflict because I was raised in a very, even though I say there's a separation of sex and nudism, it was the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of open sexual talk and innuendos and joking. And that was all okay, around me. And so in some way, I was the opposite. I was like, no, I wanted to be loved first. I wanted to,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was funny that I was a little bit confused with the sexual stuff, which should have been like, if it feels good, do it. That was kind of the thinking back then. And I was conservative in a very liberal atmosphere. But it's funny because my mom would say she was a Republican, but yet she was going nude. And I'm like, that kind of conflicts.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it all worked out and we all turned out wonderful, even with all that growing up in our teenage years and the characters we encountered there. Not all as wholesome as they should have been.
Reading the beginning part of your book, I have to tell you have like such a great descriptive style that it's so easy to fall into this and imagine the scene that you're describing.
That's what I tried to do because my first draft, which I told you took me a year, I basically told my story and I thought I was done. This is how much I knew about writing. Oh, I'm done. I told my story. I sent it off to an editor and she's like, well, this feels like I'm talking with a friend over coffee and you're telling me your story. It's very great, very interesting story. But now I want to see it, the old show, don't tell. So then I went through and just tried to create scenes from the best of my abilities and my mom's ability. That first little chapter is really my mom's, and I do say at the very disclaimer on the top, it says mom's memory with my imagination because I was only 15 months old.
Yeah.
But I was there. I was at that first encounter with nudism when they went to an open house in 1963. And my mom shared her memories with me and I sort of made a story out of it. So that's why I give that little disclaimer for the first chapter, mom's memory with my imagination.
And I love the little excerpt that you have from Diary of Jelaine Youngman in 1978. Why must I constantly reveal myself, leaving nothing private just for me? Here I stand naked before you. Judge me as you must. That is powerful for a young woman. Yeah,
I felt like when I would go out there and I'd start talking, and I tend to be a little bit of an oversharer. Once I get over I'm going to tell my story about nudism. And then I would be like, why did I tell so much? Now they have something to use against me, Yeah. And I learned that at a young age, that sometimes it's better, even though I still kept doing it, sometimes it's better not to share because even as an adult working at the hospital, if I told somebody I was a nudist, they would say something to embarrass me at the worst time,
Yeah.
when I'm trying to be professional. And it'd say, hey, how's that suntan going? Or how's the nudist camp going these days? And, right in front of a group. I would get embarrassed easily, but still, I that's why I wrote that, because I did in my journals, I expressed that I did sometimes wish that I didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
I went a long time without telling anybody. In fact, I just did a book signing not long ago from a woman I worked with in her book club. She invited me there. She said, Jelaine, I worked with you all those years, and I didn't know you were, that this was your childhood. And I said, well, I did try to keep it quiet, because I've learned that times I've told people it would come back sometimes. But now I'm out there. I'm not working. I'm retired. And so, yes, I'm telling my story.
Now, that's one thing that I wanted to talk to you about too, because you do have sample book club questions on your website. What do you find is one of the things that people are most curious about whenever you go to these book clubs and do signings?
I guess they're just some of them are stupid questions. Usually some people would ask us, oh, did you go to school naked? Or I'm like, no. No. And, just the difference of the lifestyles. And of course, there are the questions of what happens if somebody got excited there. And that's pretty much all covered in my book, because it did happen. It didn't happen often, but there was, an occasion or two. And I do show some examples in my book of, what would happen. And my mom used to joke around and say, oh, yes, if you don't do something, I have a certain pair of scissors that'll take care of your problem. So my mom was a joker, and she was the fun mom. Everybody considered her mom, because back then we had a lot of teenagers, but she could deal with situations like that in a joking manner. And there's also questions of when a woman has her time of month, So that's all covered. I have about 3 chapters about that in my traumatic first time experience. So you could read about that when you get there.
I would think that would be one of the things that would be difficult about growing up in a nudist camp, would be whenever you do start hitting puberty and having all those changes, because it's already such a hard time for a young adult anyway, whether it's a male or a female. But then to be doing it when there's no way to hide, because that's like the thing that you feel the most or first is you want to hide what's going on because you're not sure what's going on.
Right. We used to call them cow babies. But when you get to be about 12 years old, the girls would suddenly start wearing towels around them. And I never went through that really myself. Maybe because as I was leading up to that, growing up there, I used to hear my family joke around about girls that would suddenly start covering up. And so I didn't really go through that, but I went through my own little traumas, which the reader can read about.
So now, what was the worst part about it for you? What is the one thing that if you could have taken that out of the experience?
Oh, out of growing up naked?
Yeah. Besides sunburns.
Yeah. Well, after a while, you don't get sunburns anymore. You would be an all over basic tan. And yeah, I didn't really get sunburned. We would see the little cottontails that would come out, and they would get red. I'd say having everybody being on the same page, like it's in general society, though. I mean, you can't have everybody with the same heart.
Yeah.
Everybody that has the same beliefs. You're gonna have your bad apples, whether outside or inside.
Yeah.
And I do talk about a couple bad apples, but I realize in a nudist park, you could actually see those bad apples a little more obviously. But yeah, I would say in a perfect world in a nudist, just like in anywhere, you would have the true nudist who are there for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
And mostly people were. And it was really a wonderful, fun childhood. It is very free. And I'm such an outsider now, thinking back at now, it's like, it's hard to believe. And even my mom, and that's like the last line of the book, my mom, I was having lunch with her and she'd say, I can't believe we did that all those years. I'm like, really, Mom? You were like the biggest promoter of nudism in the country. I mean, we had plays, pageants, movies, musicals, any gimmick to bring people in, the outsiders into, convert them. But today, I don't even think she feels comfortable with me seeing her naked today.
Wow. That's a big change.
I know. It's very strange. I'll be honest, I'm kind of self-conscious myself. So, but I think when you're in the environment like I was not long ago, it did bring me back though. I mean, I was able to just finally strip it off and be like, yeah, this is it. This is what I remember,
Yeah.
because you get outside with everybody's prejudice and there's too much body shaming going on.
Yeah.
And especially with the internet and everything, it's hard. It's hard to be comfortable with your body.
I think that would be one of the biggest concerns for people now, because it's so easy to conceal a camera, even, in a nudist colony. There's still things you could have in your hat or your glasses and be taking video, where that wasn't even possible back in the 70s.
Right. I mean, you'd have to have a camera, which you would see, right? But that nudist camp that I did visit, give them a plug, Cypress Cove and Kissimmee. When we were there, I didn't even see people walking around with phones.
Wow.
Well, there's nowhere to put them.
Yeah, true.
But no, they were playing pickleball now instead of volleyball. But basically, it was this kind of the same, going back into the past. Although it was more like a subdivision, than we were more of a rustic camp.
What were some of the activities that they had there? Because I would think there would be some that would not be as easy to do naked.
Volleyball was very, very popular in the 70s. That was all our young group. Everybody played volleyball. And yeah, you think about bouncing around, but it worked. You don't even think about it. You do everything. And some people even did yoga in the nude. but yeah, you pretty much did everything you do with clothes, you did, without.
Now, this isn't the only memoir that you have written.
Right. Well, I've written my horse's memoir. So you might say that's fiction, but I feel like I'm really in tune with her. Abby's Tale is the story of my horse and her adoption story. It's a lot like Black Beauty, but Abby is not a sweet horse like Black Beauty was. No. She's feisty, and it kind of tells her story, and it explains why she is the way she is. It's a children's story, or I've had adults enjoy too, if you enjoy horses, but it's written in the horse voice.
Oh, nice.
And the horse characters that she was with at the rescue. I love it. I wrote it during a COVID batch. I had COVID and I was laid up on the couch, and I like to think about what my horses are thinking whenever I'm there with them. They're in Tennessee, 5 horses in Tennessee. They all have distinct personalities. So I kind of pick up on their personalities, and I think of what they would be thinking and what type of voice they would have. So it was a fun book to write. And I do plan on making it a series. I want to write, this is Abby and one of the other horses we rescued, Minesweep. And this is their story. And then I would like to add the horses as we kept adding horses to our little herd.
I love that idea. Of course, I grew up with horses too, so I love horses, especially rescue horses, because there's so many that have been through so much.
Right.
And I love hearing about them getting rescued and having a good life.
You understand then a little bit why they are the way they are. The same thing with dogs. They've come out of it a little traumatic event, and you have to deal with that and learn their trust. And this is also about earning trust, having her learn to trust again. But we'll be going up to see her tomorrow. I can't wait.
And so many people, whenever they do adopt an animal, whether it's a dog or a cat or a horse or whatever, whenever they adopt a rescue, some people are not prepared for dealing with a very traumatized animal.
Right.
And you never know what they've experienced before.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted to write her story. And it's also like the story Wicked, tells the witch's point of view and why she is the way she is. She had a little tough life. So that's why I wanted to tell Abby's Tale. And it also goes into Minesweep, and it tells both of their stories. And I would like to tell the other horses that we've acquired too, that we love so much, tell their stories too. So I'm working on that memoir. And I'm also writing a second memoir that deals with a different part of my life, that I lost a child 13 years ago. So it's a story of, I'm an optimist. So it's sort of like how an optimist deals with grief and finding your joy again.
How hard is it for you to bare your soul for something like that is so emotionally traumatic?
It is. And so I'm taking my time with this. Now, Running Around Naked took me 5 years to write because I did about 4 years of revising and editing and just getting it all just right. So this story, now I know how it goes. The story will be ready when it's ready. So I'm just going about it slowly and processing it. And I wrote all the beginning part already, the fun part, because our lives were really fun, silly. And my children and I and my ex-husband, we were just very happy. Even going through the divorce, we were able to manage all that. Everybody stay intact and stay loving to each other. But then we have this big fall, a shocker. And then it's about how we all found joy again. So the really hard part is that part, that middle part.
Yeah.
So I've written the beginning part, which is really kind of fun, because that's how we were. And I'm trying to write it without that knowledge because I didn't have that knowledge then. And then the after part and how we each dealt with it. My daughter, myself, and my ex-husband, we all dealt with it totally different. And we all have come out of it, though.
I think it's really important for people who have gone through things like that to share those stories, because there are people out in the world who may be going through the similar situation alone.
Right.
Not knowing how to deal with it. And then seeing your story will be emotionally beneficial for them to reflect on their own situation and how to come out of their, I guess, initial grief.
Right. And it's not like you come out of it like you're over your grief. You carry your loved ones with you. Mm-hmm. And you find the signs, you look for signs and you find them when you look for them. And it's going to be about all the signs that not only I saw, but my family saw. Just things that are just too much to be coincidence, know. And then we share them and we're very open about it. And I think that's important. When you've suffered a traumatic experience, to be open and be able to talk about it. Mm-hmm. My ex-husband initially was not able to say my son's name, Cody, for quite a while, for many years. And now we get together and we celebrate his life during his birthday or the anniversary. We all get together. And I belong to a group of mothers, 10 mothers who've lost children to suicide. Mm-hmm. And we've been together for 13 years now. We all lost our children around the same time.
Oh, wow.
And we've been such a support to each other. And we lean on each other when we need to, and we bring each other up. So they'll be in my story too.
Well, and I think it would be safe to say that nobody's going to understand your situation other than other mothers who were in the same situation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. And we could say things to each other that maybe other people couldn't, because we've been there.
Yeah.
And we understand. We understand if someone says, oh, it's a good thing you're young, you can have another child.
Oh.
How torturous that would be. Oh, yeah. That was one statement that was said. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I need to apologize for somebody else saying that just because, wow.
Oh, yeah. Now, when I went to one group, we just wrote down all the stupid things people have said to us. And just because they don't understand. So I think the book would also be helpful for people that haven't been there.
Yeah. And, what not to do in that situation.
Yeah. But you find out during times like that who your true friends are, mm-hmm. who are there for you. And I had a couple friends that I had really just been acquaintances with at work, but they were there for the long haul. They weren't there just for the funeral. They contacted me every day. They'd come to get me out of the bathroom when I'm crying and we're at work, Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how much it meant to me. And they become my best friends now.
I can understand why.
Yeah. But we'll always be there for each other.
That's amazing that you do have that group around you for support.
Mm-hmm. That is so important, support groups. And I did join a support group for many, many years until I branched off now. And mm-hmm. if there is a mother that has lost a child to suicide, I am more than willing to talk to her. And I have talked to moms that are just when it's raw. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, before this happened to me, even though I was a nurse and I had to deal with it at work, I had to hand babies that are dying to their mothers and be there with them. But I was very uncomfortable dealing with friends who have lost close relatives. But now I go out of my way. I go out of my way to talk to, let me know. I'll call them. I'll start texting because I know it's hard to talk initially. Mm-hmm. I know initially I couldn't talk. I had to just only text. You could text a little smiley face when your tears are going down your face,
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I do try to help people that go through that as much as I can.
Maybe that's a book that needs to be written. An advice book on how to support people going through something like that.
Right. Worst things to say.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best thing to say is not to say anything at all and just be there,
Yeah.
Just show up.
Usually whenever I'm in that situation of supporting one of my friends, the best thing that I can ever do is I send them food. If I'm not there to make mm-hmm. them food and take it to them, I will send them groceries. I will send them dinner.
Right. That's one less thing. They don't have to think about it then. They don't have to think about cooking because you don't even really eat then if you don't have somebody cooking for you.
Yeah, it's just one thing to take off their plate. Go over, do their laundry for them.
Mm-hmm. Don't even say, do you need me to do it? Just come over and do it. Yeah. Because if you ask a lot of times people will say, no, that's okay. I'm all right. But they're not.
Exactly. Just give them a break.
Yeah.
That's the best thing. Give them time. Just let them know you care.
Yeah. And I do want to give a shout out to Memoir mentors because I meet with them every week and they have been so supportive too. And it feels like we've become such a tight knit group from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we just met recently, but we go through our lives now. I find that with them, just like my mother's group, I'm going through my life with them, sharing. We've shared our stories because we start, with the memoirs. We've shared our lives,
Yeah.
and it got to be for a while that I was talking to them more than even my family. We were talking all the time on WhatsApp or in our meetings. We're a very close knit group now. It's interesting because that is a support group now too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think it's so hilarious that we just found out that we are both in that group.
Yeah.
Because
And it's a wonderful group. It is so, the people, the girls there, the women there, and the few men that we have, wonderful, wonderful group. And we just met because we did a Memoir Mentors writings group and at my cabin in Tennessee.
Oh, nice.
In May. So I finally got to meet, not everyone, but about 10 of the women face to face. And it was so wonderful, so wonderful. It felt like we'd known each other forever. We're talking about doing a writing retreat once a year now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. Now, this is the point of the show that we like to do 5 quick questions that never turn out to be quick, but it's fun, so we still keep doing it. Are you ready?
Oh boy, here we
go. Question 1. Which one do you prefer, summer or winter?
Oh, in Florida, winter, and Tennessee, summer.
Yeah, good answer. Question 2. What would be your favorite activity in your favorite weather?
Oh, horseback riding.
When do you do that? Because I saw pictures of you on a beach riding.
Oh, yes. That was in Amelia Island. But in Tennessee, we ride our horses. And down here, my husband's a boat captain and we have a boat. So we live in Hillsborough Beach 6 months out of the year and we live in Tennessee, but we don't do it the normal way. We do a month here, a month there.
Oh, wow.
We go back and forth every other month rather than doing 6 months here and 6 months there. So we have a boat here. We love boating. And then we have the horses up there.
That sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay, question 3. This is going to be a tough one, I think.
Uh-oh.
If you had to choose and you could only live in one place, would it be in Tennessee or Florida?
Tennessee.
Wow, that was quick.
No, because we're talking about moving there full time. My mother is still here. My mother is going to be 91 in October. And unless we can get her up there, we're back and forth. We're going to be back and forth.
Question 4. Since you seem to have a very full life, it must get stressful once in a while. What do you do when you need to do a little self-care?
Playing the guitar. I just lost my sister in April. And I found that playing the guitar, even before when she was very ill, I'd be with her, and then I'd come back and I'd start strumming. And it was really therapeutic. And I think it'd be great for anybody to learn an instrument because I found that it really is therapeutic to kind of pour out your heart, singing and playing, even if you don't play well or sing well, just kind of getting it out. I guess I'm a talker. So I think talking out the stress, venting helps. Running. Oh, that was something else I started doing when my sister was sick. I started running again because I used to love to run. And that really helps.
I think exercise in general is a great option for people. Begins those endorphins going, which are the feel-good chemicals in your body. It's a good mood elevator.
Right. A friend of mine wrote a book called Depression Hates a Moving Target.
Oh, nice.
And I think that really sums it up.
Yeah. Question 5. What is a book that you always recommend to friends if they say, I need a good read? What do you usually tell them? Who's your favorite author?
Well, what's her name? Oh, now you're going to catch me here. Who is that Australian writer? I got like all of her books. I'll tell you 1 second. Recently, I've been recommending Remarkably Bright Creatures, which I loved. That's about an octopus. I've been recommending that book. But as far as an author, that I love all her books. Liane Moriarty. Have you ever read any of hers? Liane Moriarty?
I don't know that.
Oh, she did all those, like Truly Madly Guilty. She's Australian. The Husband's Secret was one of my favorite ones she did. 3 Wishes, The Hypnotist Love Story, What Alice Forgot was really good. Liane Moriarty.
I'm going to have to look her up because I am not familiar with these.
Well, look her up. She's Liane Moriarty. Liane Moriarty, and out of Australia. But I just love all her books.
See, this is one of the reasons why I ask people this question, is it just increases my own to-read list.
I know. I'm always looking for a good book to read.
Let's remind all of the listeners who you are and the name of your book.
Okay. My name is Jelaine Lombardi, and I'm the author of Running Around Naked, a memoir, and also Abby's Tale, Memoir of a Rescued Horse. And they can both be found on Amazon and Kindle. And I've just recently put out an audiobook for Running Around Naked. I'm not the narrator. I did hire a narrator, somebody who's more the expert to do that. And if I had the time, I would possibly have tried to do it myself. I might try to do it for Abby's Tale, which is a much smaller book. And you can visit my website at JelaineLombardi.com to see any of the events.
And of course, all of your information will be in the description of today's podcast and on our website, burkhartbooks.com. And you have a feature in the August-September issue of Book Banter magazine.
Oh, thank you so much. And I love reading other authors that you've interviewed and the artists and the chefs and all that. It's wonderful, wonderful podcast that you have.
I tell you, this has been one of the funnest things that I have ever come up with. I so enjoy. It's like everybody's always saying, oh, you always talk about in every interview, I'm really looking forward to this interview. It's like, that's because I have been. It may seem ridiculous that every time that I do an interview, I'm talking about how excited I am to have this guest. And I've really been looking forward to talking to them. But it's true for every single one of them. I pick people that I want to talk to.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has an interesting story to tell, and you just got to get in there and listen.
Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. And I've learned some incredible things from people that I never would have come across if it hadn't been for this podcast. It's so much fun. I get to meet people like you, which is hilarious considering that we are in the same memoir writing group and just have always been coming in at different times.
I guess, yeah. But I see you on WhatsApp.
I haven't been in there very often. I think that I'm just like hitting the few times that you aren't there.
I guess so.
This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on to Book Banter with Diane Burkhart with me and telling us all about your 2 memoirs. And hopefully people will now go take the time to check out your website and buy your books.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So there you have it, folks. My incredible interview with the wonderful Jelaine Lombardi. She is really such an incredible person. You should go check out her memoir, Running Around Naked, a memoir, and also the one that she wrote for her rescue horse, Abby's Tale, Memoir of a Rescued Horse. Now she does plan to do a whole series, including all of the other horses that she has rescued. That should be a wonderful collection. Now, next week, we have author David Weil. He is a physician who used to work as a transplant specialist. He has written a memoir called Exhale, Hope, Healing, and a Life in Transplant, as well as a fiction novel titled All That Really Matters. And this book was inspired by his work as a transplant doctor. He has got an incredible story to tell, and you will want to come back for this. We had such an interesting conversation. I can't even begin to describe it. You're going to have to come back and listen for yourself. Now, as far as news about Book Banter magazine, so much is going on right now. I'm trying so hard to get the October-November issue ready to go, and our year-end book buying guide, which is also going to be the regular issue for our December broadcasts. But it looks like I'm going to have to do a lot of work really quickly because I'm going to be going in for shoulder surgery at some point, and we'll have to take a few weeks off. So yeah, I'm getting very busy trying to get all this stuff ready to go, and I'm also putting together print versions of Book Banter magazine. Cross your fingers, folks. With any luck, these should all be available before the end of October. I was going to shoot for October 1st, but we'll have to see. So just keep watching our social media and listening to our podcast, and I will let you know when everything is ready to go. But for now, I really need to get back to my computer and start doing some more work because there's a lot to get done. So now, it's that time again. Time for you all to go forth and be happy.